And this is a VR to Jesse. Sasquatch 2. Actually, he was the only one, and then all of a sudden he became two. Got my Kamoy. Nice Canadian. And in it I have Lane 1Q. I always used to call it Lane IQ. I knew it was 1Q. I just like calling it IQ. So this is a video, a VR for Jesse. And he wanted to know, getting it started, hang on. You know, I kind of pack it loose in the middle there so it brings that heat right down through the middle. So I kind of smoke it from the middle out when I'm smoking. Anyway, he wanted to know our fondest pipe memories. And a lot of you guys, you know a lot of my memories because I've been here a long time. And you know that when we were kids, my dad used to blow big rings of smoke before he would leave because he traveled all the time. We got trouble with him a lot of time too, though. So, but he traveled all the time, so he would blow these great big smoke clouds and for us. And at night we would dance around in these clouds of smoke. And what it is when we went to bed, our clothes would smell like that tobacco smoke. So anytime, you know, we were scared or something, we could just, you know, smell of our nightgowns, and our nightgowns would smell just like Dad, and that would kind of give us a little bit of protection, you know. And he always called it monster proof, and it worked because there was never any monsters. And this is memories, you know, like I say, as a kid growing up. One of the memories that I don't think I talk too much about is the car. My dad, my mom didn't like loading my dad's pipe. My mom was a cigarette smoker. I mean, from day one till the day she died, she had a cigarette. Never had lung cancer or anything. She died from heart complications and a couple other complications that I've touched on before, but they have nothing to do with this. My mom didn't like loading my dad's pipe. So from the time, oh, there's a redbird. I don't know if I can catch it or not for you. Hope I did. Sitting there on my fence. Anyway, my mom didn't like loading and packing and lighting my dad's pipe. So, since I'd gotten my first pipe when I was 4 years old, my dad showed me how to light it right. Now, I didn't get to smoke it until later, but... So I'd sit in the front seat of the car. So when we would travel, a lot of times, I either got to sit in between Mom and Dad, or I got the whole front seat to Dad and myself, you know, because she'd get in the back with the sisters and stuff, or maybe she wouldn't even be going with us, but I could load my dad's pipe, and I could load it right, because if I didn't load it right early on, he taught me how to pack his pipe. And if I didn't load it right, you know, he just gave it back to me until I did. So I got pretty good at being able to load his pipe. So when we would travel, I got to sit in the front seat and load my dad's pipes. Well, then as I was growing a little bit older, he let me light them. You know, I would take that first light, and so that he didn't have to disengage from what he was doing, which was driving with his precious cargo, us in the car, to, you know, light his pipe. So I think that was probably how I first started getting my first little bit of nicotine. Now remember, I was probably already into nicotine on a cellular level anyway, because, like I say, my folks, and especially my mom, were in tobacco farms, and we grew up playing in the burley fields and going to the tobacco warehouses, and, you know, things that people don't get to do. I get to remember things that are good and bad about those warehouses. I mean, I don't think people ever talk about the back doors of those warehouses where the rotted or the molded or the bad tobacco was. I don't think people get to, they don't know about the ammonia smell that comes from that tobacco drying. there's a lot of memories about tobacco that I get to have that a lot of other people don't get to have. You know, dancing in the burley fields by tying the leaves around us and sticking the tops of the burley on top of our head, and as they wilted, they became little caps. And so I have a really lot of memories of tobacco. But I can remember like the first time my dad actually let me light and smoke my own pipe. When I was 4, I had taken and stuck my bubble pipe into his tobaccos, and he said, you know, and you know, other men would probably have exploded, but my dad didn't. My dad said, you know, if you're gonna do tobacco and you're gonna smoke a pipe and you know you're gonna pretend, we're gonna let you pretend right. So he went and got me a little Medico, and a package of Captain Black or Blackjack or something like that. I can't remember which it was, and I would sit around and pretend like I'm loading. I'd load up that pipe and I'd pretend like I was smoking it whenever my dad's friends were around and they were all sitting around smoking. And how cute, you know, a little kid doing that. But when I was about 12, now my dad had bought me a Dunhill and had bought me a Dunhill every year from the time I was 4 years old. I don't know if he ever thought he was going to end up giving them to me or not. I think maybe in a way he thought I was never going to take an interest in it and he was going to get to keep all of those, but that was the excuse that he'd give Mom. And every year, at least, I knew one of the big presents that I was either going to get for Christmas or for my birthday. And I loved them. I loved the shape of them. I loved the color of them. There was nothing about a pipe that I didn't like. I guess I was just, you know, a child of my dad's. And but when I was about 12, it's the first. Now remember, in the meantime, I'm loading his pipe and taking a little bit of nicotine in as I'm getting those first puffs started for him. You know, I learned very quickly, don't inhale. I mean, I was only like 7 or 8 when I learned you don't inhale that. But so when I was 12 years old, and this, you got to realize this is a different time. I mean, there was already kids smoking cigarettes by the time they were 12 and 13 in my past, in my era. I don't think it even became illegal to. I can remember at the age of like 14, my mom sending me in with money to go pick up a package of cigarettes for her. So there wasn't the age limit. I think was maybe by then. By the time I was about 16, I think that was the age limit. You know, you had to be at least 16 in order to buy tobacco products. But when I was 12, we were all sitting around the house. It was a holiday, and it was actually Easter. And we were sitting around after a big dinner and stuff, and a couple of my uncles and my dad had gone down into their den. And I was allowed in there. You know, a lot of the kids didn't want to go in there. It was just, you know, old men talking and stuff. And which reminds me of me, the first time me being in there and hearing them talk about cake. And then there wasn't any cake. You know, I was like, well, where's the cake? I thought we were going to have cake. And they were talking about the cake in their pipes, not about birthday cake or you know, an actual cake. And I was like really disappointed when I learned that cake didn't mean cake. But anyway, back to, so I was about 12 and it was Easter, and my dad pulled out my Dunhill, one of my Dunhills, and it was the first one he'd ever given me, which was a little size 2 apple. And it was the cutest little pipe you'd ever seen. It was just a little round apple pipe. And he said, can you get it? So do you think you can load this one? And of course, I said, well, sure I can, you know. And I didn't know he was going to let me smoke it, but I went ahead and I loaded it up with some, guess what? 965. Yep. First tobacco I really smoked, and the first tobacco that I loaded into one of my pipes was 965. And that's probably why to this day when people say what's your favorite tobacco, I have to say 965. I'm sorry, there's someone walking on the street and I have my dogs out here, so you'll just have to be patient. He'll go by in just a second. But either way, it was kind of interesting that I loaded that up, and my dad said, well, here's a book of matches. You know, you can go ahead and light it up. And so that was one of my best smoking memories, was me being able to actually sit there and smoke my pipe with my dad and some of my uncles and stuff. Some of my nephews were there too, but they weren't They couldn't care less, you know. Some of them had been smoking them out of cob pipes from the time they were kids, you know. So for them, there was a few of the cousins there, but for the most part, it was just me and those old men. Back then, I thought they were so old. They were what, in their 30s maybe, but I lit it up and I sat there, and my dad didn't let me smoke the whole bowl, even though it was only a size 2. He only let me, you know, light it a couple of times, um, and I remember thinking then that man, this is the best thing in the world. You know, how could anybody not want to smoke a pipe? These are so neat. You have something in your hand. You get to play with fire. You get to have the smoke coming up. I mean, you know, fluffy little clouds right in front of your eyes every day. You didn't even have to be outside to see the fluffy clouds. And I know as a little girl that my idea of smoking is different than little boys, you know. With little boys, it made him a man. With little girls, it took us into a new little fairyland that we got to go into. And that's always how I think of it when I'm smoking a pipe is in that little fairyland area. But I thought I was so elegant and so sophisticated and all that kind of stuff back then. I was, like I say, I was only 12. And then I remember Mom saying, okay, everybody come in here and wash the dishes. Well, a little kid exposed to nicotine. I washed them, I dried them, I put them up. I just was like talking 100 miles a minute and stuff like that. And my mom, I remember my mom looked at my daddy, and my mama said, Mama, Daddy, have you been letting her smoke her cigarette? And Dad said, no, I don't ever let her smoke a cigarette. I would never let her smoke a cigarette. She's never going to inhale any tobacco. He didn't say that I'd been smoking my pipe. He just said I wasn't smoking cigarettes. And there was kind of a little secret, I guess, at that point in time. And it's kind of one of those secrets we kept for years, you know, that Mom didn't know that I had smoked by the time I was 12. And then, you know, later on, of course, it was out in the open, and I got to smoke once in a while. Whenever, you know, I wanted to. As I turned 14, 15, it wasn't a big deal. I also knew, though, that I could never take it out of the house, that I could never smoke in front of other children. I could never teach other children to smoke. I should never give them one of my pipes. You know, I had all these rules that I had to have as a kid because back then, you know, they didn't think you should expose your children to that. Even in the 60s, you know, they didn't think you should expose your children to pipe smoke or tobacco in general. All of us did get exposed, though. I mean, I remember my sister stealing cigarettes from the time, you know, she was like 10 or 11, and I can remember my little sister, she started smoking cigarettes in high school because she got caught in the bathrooms all the time. So I know she was smoking when she was young and stuff. But that's one of those memories, you know, that I will always remember, is my dad finally thinking that I was grown up enough and old enough to smoke a pipe. It was just like he'd given me the pass to heaven. It's always interesting when you listen to other people's memories about who they, you know, their first smoking memories. You know, I was watching pipes and kayaks, and that's always fun to like I say, it's always neat to watch different people and hear their first times and their stories and stuff about smoking, because it's kind of like, and I don't want to say this wrong, but it's, for me, being around tobacco and around tobacco smokers, it's kind of like a lot of people. Do you remember the first time you had chocolate? You know, do you remember the first chocolate that you had? In my lifetime, you know, from the time I was a kid, there was chocolate candy bars and stuff, so and kisses and chocolate morsels, you know, that you put into cookies and stuff. So there was never a first time for me for having chocolate. But yet my aunt can remember her first time because she saw a car and her first candy bar at the same time. They were sitting on the farm wall and at the corner on their fence, I guess, and a car, an automobile, one of the first automobiles that I ever seen, drove by, and the people inside the car threw Hershey candy bars at him. So, you know, that was that kind of memory. But we don't have a lot of firsts in our lives, especially the new generation. You know, they're not going to remember the first time they were on a computer, the first time they had a soda pop, the first time for a lot of things, because it it just started with them. You know, from the time they were born, this stuff was around. But as far as smoking a pipe, a lot of us remember the first time we smoked a pipe because it's just an unusual thing. So that's my answer. And any of you that haven't been watching the Sasquatch, he's now 2. He used to just be the only one, but now he's number 2. And Jesse's really a nice guy. So those of you that used to be subscribed to him, you need to look into him again and sub him again, because now he had some trouble. I think he got hacked on his first one, and so and we see some people get hacked like that. But go ahead and sub him again and send him in your VR, because this will be fun. As usual, you know, this is just a support video. There's only been one video that hadn't been a support video, and that was to the Bearded Bristol. And he is an artist, and he is giving away a picture of Einstein, who I think he did a great job on that. But he's also going to do a portrait of you. And so I think that is just, I want one. But as far as this one's concerned, you know, this is just a support video. I don't need no more tobacco. I don't need no more stuff. However, isn't it ghosty? Ghost Cobb is doing I don't know if that's going to be a support video too. He's doing a giveaway with a bunch of his stuff from Pennsylvania. Him and his wife are picking stuff from Pennsylvania. And I think that will be a lot of fun to be involved in that kind of a thing. I always like sending things when I send things out, I like sending things from locals. So happy, joy. As you know, I am watching you.